let you know that this is going to be recorded for you so that you can review it with your friends, your fellow Wild Ones members, your family, and your landscape design friends. Just wanted to let you all know we're going to get started here in just about 3.5 minutes. If you want to grab some coffee, tea, hot chocolate, maybe a glass of wine for tonight's presentation, you're going to be able to sit back, relax, and enjoy two fantastic presenters and leaders in the horticultural industry, Josh Altidor and Andy Brand. We're really excited to have you all joining us tonight to talk about our Native Design Landscape series. And tonight you're going to be getting your chance to meet the designers from the Boston Basin Residential Design. You'll see on the screen we have this beautiful colored rendered design on the far right with all the plants labeled and a long extensive list of plants. So if you don't know what we're talking about today, this is the focus of our presentation tonight. We're going to be talking about the design ethos as well as the plant selection with two of the top designers in the Northeast United States. It's going to be a lot of fun. We encourage you tonight to share, ask questions. Feel free to use the chat feature if you'd like to tell us where you're from, or if you have any challenges in today's presentation, we ask that you write that down in the chat feature. And on the Q&A side of things, if you have any questions for our designers, please feel free to hit on that button that looks like a conversation box with the Q&A underneath it. We'll be having a Q&A session at the end of the original presentations by Josh and Andy, and you'll have an opportunity to ask your questions. And it sounds like we already have some people checking in, so feel free, let us know where you're from. We have Andrea Stork from Portage, Michigan. We have April from St. Louis, but also designs in the Chicago area. We have Sue Dunn, a master gardener from Rhode Island, and I think Sue was one of the people that sent in a question for you guys for later. We got Judy Baylock out in the Philly Burbs near me. I'm joining you all from Longwood Gardens right now. Who else do we have joining us? And Judy, I wonder if you're part of the newly established Southeastern Pennsylvania Wild Ones chapter. I just talked with you guys last week. Karen Wood, a good friend and colleague of both mine and Josh's from our time in Northwest Ohio. She's joining us from Bowling Green. We have Judy Voigt, who's in St. Louis Park. We have Jane from St. Louis, more people from Chicago, more people from Illinois in the West Cook chapter. Deb Vincent from Minneapolis. We have Binghamton, New York. We have Beth and Bob from Cincinnati, Ohio, and from Cottage, Wisconsin, Northern Illinois. We've got Heidi Health from Boston, Massachusetts. Janine from Kentucky. You guys are all joining us from across the country. Cynthia Glass in nearby Bucks County, Albany, New York, New Hampshire. Judy, yes, you did the Pinelands tour with me. Thank you very much. And yes, it is a handsome suit. Thank you very much. We have Deb from Toronto, Canada. We've gone international. Lisa's joining us from Ottawa. We have John and Jackie Seymour, Abby from Appleton, and many, many more of you. So feel free. This is great for us to see where all of you are from and see the breadth of places where the Wild Ones has members. If any of you are not a member, one of the other things I'd like to do is welcome you to our group. And hopefully you would enjoy tonight's presentation. You get a chance to see the native designs online and think that this would be the right group of people for you to hang out with and learn more about native plants and the landscape. We encourage you to also share this message with your friends, your family, and any prospective members of Wild Ones. It's going to be made freely available and public to you all on YouTube. So if for any reason tonight you lose connectivity, the power goes out, the dog runs by and spills your coffee on the computer, which we hope doesn't happen, we'll be here to help you with a recording. We also have Kimberly from Kalamazoo, Iona from Roseville, Minnesota, Kathy from Loveland, Colorado. So definitely, Kathy, you and your friends out in Colorado, hopefully you guys get a chance to see the Front Range design that just was released not too long ago. But we're going to get started here in 30 seconds. So it's the last bit of time for you to go and get that glass of water, a coffee, a little bit of wine, and sit back and relax for tonight's presentation. We also have Steve from O'Fallon, Missouri, and Kathy Jones from Minnesota. So with that, I'm going to introduce myself and our speakers, and we're going to get started. For those of you who don't know me, I am a national board member. My name is Matthew Ross, and I'm the Director of Continuing Education at Longwood Gardens, right near Philadelphia. We have two amazing presenters today. Josh Altidor was born and raised in Haiti. He currently serves as the General Superintendent of Parks, Maintenance, and Turfgrass Management from the City of Boston, and He became the first Haitian immigrant to design and plant in the oldest botanical garden in America. Many of you might have been there, the Boston Public Garden. He's known for his bold approach and tells his story through vibrant design. And in 2018, he became the first Haitian American Director of Maintenance for Boston Parks and Recreation. He's focused on creating a sustainable and inclusive urban park system that works for every Bostonian, regardless of their zip code. He will be our first presenter today, and our second presenter today is Andy Brand. Andy Brand was born and raised in Connecticut. He graduated from the University of Connecticut with a BS and MS degree in environmental horticulture and plant science, respectively. For 27 years, Andy was employed by Broken Arrow Nursery in Hamden. I just got a chance to go there. Phenomenal selection of interesting plants, where he was the nursery manager, and still has a strong legacy of a wide distribution of plant material from all across the world. In 2018, in March, he joined the staff at Coastal Maine Botanic Garden. If you haven't been there, they have a lot of things to offer, and currently is the home of some of the largest and most majestic trolls you'll see anywhere in North America. He's the curator of living collections, and his responsibilities include plant selection and introducing new plants to the garden's collection and maintaining plant records and labels. He currently is the interim director of horticulture at the gardens. Before we get started, I want to give both of these gentlemen great kudos because they were able to put together this design collaboratively, which is the first time one of the Wild Ones native plants designs was done with more than one designer. And I was able to be part of our exercises that led to the final design. So to give you a little taste of what both Andy and Josh went through, and I was able to help facilitate as being a national board member of Wild Ones, we actually went through several different iterations of the design using tools on Zoom and PowerPoint, as well as other software techniques, and lots of discussion from both of the designers to come up with a perfect plant mix for all of you. So I've talked enough, and I know you all are anxious to hear what Josh has to say. So Josh, if you'd like to share your screen, we are going to welcome you to the stage today to present for everyone a little bit more about the design ethos of the Boston native plant design.
Thank you, Matt. I hope you guys can hear me well. Thank you for the great presentation. That's a beautiful introduction. I know Matt for a long time now. We work together back in Ohio. Let me see. We worked together back in Ohio, so I had the pleasure to work with Matt for a few years now. So the Wild One Northeast design approach, we wanted to understand the unique approach of the Northeast design, the intention and the pride that we take in selecting all our plants, and the navigation and the connectivity. I know, talking about one of my hero, Frederick Law Homestead, talking about the connectivity and the landscape. So I wanted to take that same approach as well. And we're trying to preserve the historical element in the design, so which you will see later on, right? See? Huh. So, like Matt said, my name is Josh Altidor. I have a master's degree in design and sustainable urban environment at the Northeastern University here in Boston. I also have a leadership management at Harvard University School of Extension. And I was the first Haitian American to lead the Parks Department in Boston. Right now, I'm the General Superintendent for Maintenance and the Turf Management. I also have a certificate in Green Roof for Healthy City not too long ago. So if you guys been in Boston, I think you guys seen my work, like Matt mentioned, at the Boston Public Garden in a different part of the city. So we're trying to eradicate green gentrification in the city. So hopefully everybody will have the same opportunity around the city of Boston, so which will spread all over Massachusetts. So the approach of the design that me, Matt, and Andrew was trying to create was a sense of being inclusive, a design that's very sustainable, that's easy to navigate. When you get to the site, which we will show later on, you will see that you will be able to navigate through the site and see everything at the same time. we're trying to create a sense of quiet place where you can go out and have a nice cup of coffee, meet with some friends and, get some wine or whatnot. It's an oasis. So which means like an outdoor botanical garden where you have different, plant varieties or species in the design. So we can use that 365 days, a very active landscape that operates on itself. So to explain that, right, you have your personal space. We know sometimes you work so hard and, you want to come home and just relax, be quiet, right? A secluded sitting area where we have different benches in the design, in the rendering where, people may not even see that you're home, but you're home, right? A quiet place. It's also considered as a style. You can see the style and the design are very intentional. And the plant that we select, they go with the scale of the landscape. We want to create something that's very organic with a natural flow, nothing that's synthetic. So the design is speak very loud. Like Matt said, I'm known for my bold approach and my design. I am known, for taking the risk and create something that's very attractive, something that can draw you in. So this design that you're going to see for the Northeast region, nothing is mute, nothing is lost. All the different layers are well represented. It speaks volume. It's also an ecological hub where it promotes the biodiversity and a full functional ecosystem in our society, right? So the hope and expectation that we had, me, Andy and Matt through Zoom, different meeting, we were going crazy, we were going at it, but it wasn't work for us because it's our passion. We wanted people to see, to have that hope and expectation that when the season change, so does the evolvement of color and texture. There's always something new to see every week, right? Every season, the plant will attract, birds and bees and butterfly and, bring borders to life. It will entertain you and you can have fun. Again, relax and unwind. We want to see that hope and expectation and the way that you feel when you walk into this space, very excited, very upbeat. Sometimes we can get down and, you have a long day and work can be very exhausting. And then you come home, wanted to have that, that relaxation and just sit back and enjoy the beauty of the landscape. You feel like you're young again, right? Young, a sense of well-being, a sense of being, you contribute to something, that again, give back to nature and give back to the environment, a sense of peace and calm, a sense of where history is not being lost in our design, that the thing that we design here, history is not being lost. Everything has its place, everything has its purpose, and everything speaks volume when you go to the site. So I know, Andy has to present and Matt has to present. So we want to have a better interaction with all of you guys. So I'm going to stop here, right? Again, my name is Josh Altidor. I work for the city of Boston, the Parks Department. My information will be here. If you need to reach out and have a, offsite conversation, please let me know. So again, it's a pleasure for me to be here with you guys and journey together. Thank you so much.
Great, Josh. And I had a couple questions for you just right off the bat before we hop into Andy. And you mentioned paying homage to the history of the site and the place itself. What are a couple things that you wanted to note in the design itself that you felt made it a Bostonian design?
I mean, Boston, we are known for our pudding stone. We have different stone, archaic, antique laying around. So we wanted to integrate that part in the design. So that's preservation, that historical, right? And the design. And also any local plants or local vendors, of course, it's natives, right? Any local plants, you can see like the next door or the next, next nursery. You don't have to break your head and look for something far away. It could be, right there at your disposal. I think that's one thing that we were able to do in selecting our plant, be more intentional, and then include the historical part of Boston and everything that we were doing.
Perfect. Well, I think that's a great segue into Andy. And Andy, if you want to start your video frame, I'm going to change and have us spotlight your video. And just wanted to remind everyone, if you have questions for Josh and Andy, we are going to have about half an hour or so of questions for you guys at the end of today's presentation. So I know we've already received about 30 questions, but if you have any additional questions that come up during today's presentations with Andy and Josh, feel free to use the question and answer tab. So with that, I'm going to have Andy come up to the stage and share with you a little bit more about the plants that were selected for the design. So welcome, Andy.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Josh. As Josh said, we had a blast putting this design together and meeting over the many months this past year. And it's really exciting to be involved with such a project and with Wild Ones and having the opportunity to work with native plants, which is really one of my main passions. And as you'll see through these few slides we go through, my other passion, which is connecting our native plants and attracting insects and birds and other wildlife to our yards. And by doing so with the plants we select, we should increase the biodiversity in our yards. So when we were sitting down and Zooming several times, we came up, several different considerations to select the plants. And, some things we considered included, plant hardiness. Obviously, we need plants that are going to survive in the Boston area and, be super cold hardy and deal with the winters that they can have in Boston. So the plants need to be durable and resilient. And at the same time, we want them to look good. We want them to be aesthetically pleasing to us. Have nice flowers, nice foliage, maybe an interesting habit. And, if we can include plants that provide, interest year round, all the better. And I think some of the plants you'll see shortly, they do that. And for me, the wildlife benefits of the plants is very important, particular ones that can provide benefits long-term, not just, short-term or ephemeral type of benefits. In the design, working with Josh, we intended to try to create kind of mini habitats to optimize biodiversity. So there's going to be you'll see the pond area or the wet area, to attract certain types of wildlife. And then we've got evergreen cover to attract wildlife. And then we have more drier areas with a different set of plants for that too, just to give these different types of soil types and habitats that will just, give you as much chance of attracting the most biodiversity to your yards. We want it to, as Josh said, be an oasis for ourselves, but then also for all the other living creatures in our area. We made a point to include many species that are going to attract our native pollinators. And then we did include some lawn because, some lawn is just nice to, maybe have a picnic on and play with your children or grandkids or your pets. But, limit the amount of lawn and include more native alternatives instead of the lawn. So just looking at a few of these species, one of my favorites are the milkweeds, and I'm particularly fond of Asclepias tuberosa or butterfly weed. This is great in those sunny areas. That's where we included a lot of Asclepias tuberosa. It's a great, very durable, tough plant, very adaptable, many different soil types. Takes a full baking sun type of habitat, puts down a taproot. So, with that regard, if we get some really drought situations, it'll, withstand those type of conditions. Brilliant orange flowers, attracts many different pollinators with its nectar, but then also it's very important because it attracts monarch butterflies. The females will lay their eggs, and then the caterpillars will happily munch away on all parts of the plant. Here you see this was actually, I took this the other day at the gardens, and it's eating the foliage, and pretty soon we'll probably start eating some of those seed pods that you see here. hummingbirds. You know, who doesn't love hummingbirds? And if you want to attract hummingbirds, and you can get hummingbirds, I don't care if you're in a rural setting or if you're in a suburb or even in the city. I visited gardens smack down in the middle of cities who have had, you know, plants to attract hummingbirds, and they get them there. You know, ruby-throated hummingbirds in the Boston area will find your Lobelia Cardinalis if you had it planted. And we included this plant around the pond setting because it does like to have wet feet and moist soils. And it's just going to add that kind of brilliant red, you know, fire engine red kind of torches in that corner where we have the pond situated, and just brighten that corner, add a really spark of color. And then, you know, as you're out there, as Josh said, at the end of the day, relaxing, having a glass of wine or something to eat, you can watch these beautiful flowers and watch the hummingbirds that are attracted to these flowers. And we tried to include some interesting plants that maybe don't necessarily going to knock your socks off, but they add interest pretty much throughout the spring, summer, fall, even through the winter. And one of those is this gray sedge, Carex grayi. You know, it's got typical sedge-like grass-like foliage, but it's the fruiting structures that are so unique. Where you see these, you know, they're about the size of a quarter, a little bit bigger, these spiky seed heads that just add a lot of interest and texture to the garden. And we just tried to include some of these really neat native sedges throughout the landscape to provide interest and as an alternative to using so much lawn. You know, Josh mentioned we tried to, you know, focus on kind of year-round gardens, and I think it's really important, particularly if we're trying to attract, you know, pollinators and insects and things throughout the year. And we obviously then need things that are going to flower early in the season, throughout the summer, into the fall, to provide, you know, that nectar that these insects are going to require, the pollen. And one of my favorites for early spring flowers is the fall Solomon seal. Used to be Smilacina, and now they changed it to Mayanthemum racemosum. And this is a wonderful woodland, you know, partial shade perennial. It has these wonderful arching stems that are topped off with these terminal clusters of feathery white flowers. And this will spread slowly by underground rhizomes and form just a wonderful patch of flowers in May here in our region. It's just fantastic. It brightens up a shady corner of the landscape. But part shade is great for this plant. And then it gets these wonderful fruits after the flowers go by that slowly take on color. They start off this kind of pinkish color and then get spotted red. And then eventually they will end up a brilliant fire engine red. So you kind of get a multi-season interest with that plant. And one area that we kind of struggled with this design was an area kind of like the hell strip along the road. It's a narrow band between the sidewalk and the city street. And one thing that we finally came up with, and I kind of promoted, that based on my experience at the gardens, what we used in our parking lots between the roads and where, you know, the park where people park, there's lots of pavement on both sides. And we tried to mimic that with some of our plant choices for this strip in the Boston design, and two perfect ones that withstand, you know, heat and, you know, being snow dumped on them, maybe some salt periodically, maybe, you know, unfortunately dogs possibly urinating on them, things like that, being trampled on maybe by feet, by children or something. One great one is the Pycnanthemum tenuifolium, the mountain mints, and mountain mints are fantastic for attracting native pollinators. Here in the Northeast, we have many species we can grow here, and it's amazing the different types of bees and flies and other pollinators that are just cover the tops of these flowers. The one thing I do like about tenuifolium, it has very narrow foliage, very neat texture to add. And then when you combine it with the purple love grass that you see, the kind of pinkish cast in the bottom right-hand side of the slide, a wonderful native grass that this time of year, it's just glowing, this pinkish haze throughout the landscape. Super tough. And as I said, they're perennial, so they're going to die down in the fall, get cut back, and then if snow happens to get dumped on them, you will be they will be okay, and you'll be delighted to have them return next spring. I mentioned earlier, we really tried to pick plants that are durable and resilient, and also relatively maintenance-free. No landscape is really maintenance-free. You are going to have to put some effort and work into it, but including plants like this white wood aster is a great choice. This plant can take many different conditions. I've seen it growing in full blazing sun. I've seen it in quite a bit of shade. Ideally, it likes, some part shade, edge of a woodland, and that's kind of where we included it here. And it will slowly expand and form these wonderful colonies of bright green foliage through the spring and summer. And then this time of year, they're topped with just clouds of bright white flowers that are very attractive, again, to pollinators. They're very, very showy for us. You'll look across your landscape and just see this mass of white flowers. These are plants that are flowering currently here in Maine, in mid-September. They're coming into their glory right now here in the Northeast. And then ground covers. We tried to pick a diverse selection of native ground covers that would, kind of fill in the nooks and crannies around some of the shrub selections we had. And one of my favorites is the foam flower, Tiarella cordifolia. Has wonderful kind of heart-shaped leaves, maybe a lobed leaf to it. Woodland setting, it just kind of creeps slowly through, underneath, mountain laurels and viburnums and things like that. And then you're treated with these wonderful foamy flowers in the springtime. A couple of shrubs we included. Speaking of, tough and, a plant that can take kind of poor soils, New Jersey tea, Ceanothus americanus. It's a great one. And why it does so well in these poor situations, it has the ability to fix its own nitrogen. So it's not necessarily going to require a lot of nutrients being added to the soil. So it can take some soils that are relatively nutrient poor. And it's, throughout most of the time in the seasons, you're going to have a really nice shrub that gets 3 to 4 feet tall and wide. And then in the summer, it's topped with these clusters of little white flowers that you see here that really put on a show for several weeks in the summertime. And then they go by and you're left with kind of a neat triangular dried seed capsule afterwards. But great for full sun situations. And again, where maybe the soils get a little bit drier, a little rocky. And like I said, it fixes its own nitrogen. So it can tolerate some pretty lousy soil types. Here's just to show you how profuse the flowering can be in the summer. Deer Villa, this plant is a workhorse in the landscape. It's very durable. It serves a lot of purposes. It forms these wonderful spreading mounds of foliage. It does run a little bit. It will spread slowly by rhizomes, and it smothers out weeds. So that's a great thing. It reduces the amount of weeding you'll have to do in the garden. It produces these lovely honeysuckle-like flowers. This is bush honeysuckle because the flowers do resemble kind of the climbing honeysuckles that you're very familiar with. It will flower early in the summer and then sporadically throughout the summer into the fall even. A lot of times the new growth, as you see, comes out with that maroon color, which is a nice contrast. Grows 3 to 4 feet tall. And then, as I said, similar spread, but then it will slowly start to fill in those open areas. Here you see it used along a walkway as kind of a nice to soften the edge of a walkway. We did include a few native, like large shrubs, small trees, and one we included was Hamamelis virginiana, the native witch hazel, mainly because it has wonderful fall color, but also flowers in the fall. We were trying to get, seasonal interest in the garden in our design. And it's a great small tree that can get 15 to 18 feet tall over many years. But come October into November, you get to really appreciate these spidery yellow flowers that you see here. So it's a great delight if you're out working in the garden, underneath, maybe cleaning out some leaves and cutting back perennials, and you have a tree above you that's producing these wonderful flowers. And it's also, good for some of those, there are things still flying around then, pollinators and such. So, you'll see some of the late flying bees and flies and things using these flowers for food. Probably my favorite plant choice for birds is winterberry, Ilex peticillata. It's a dynamite plant come this time of year. They're all changing color, becoming bright red right now. The leaves are going to drop. It's a deciduous holly, and you're going to be left with these stems just glowing with bright red fruits that come, anytime from November, December, January, the birds are going to get to them. You're going to see some of our native thrushes like robins and bluebirds even. Migrating birds, even this time of year into November, will stop in and grab some of these fruits. They're great to bring in for holiday decorations as well. It can get big, so we kind of place this towards the back of areas to let it fulfill its big size. Thing to remember is you need to include both a male and female. The fruits are produced on the female plants. And here, just some of the contrasting colors you can get as the foliage turns yellow and then drops, and then contrasting it with, birch trees, or using an evergreen background, which we did to make those fruits really stand out. Mountain laurel, we included mountain laurel because it is a multi-season plant. In June, early June, you're delighted with these wonderful pale pink to white flowers that will cover these plants. It's a lovely evergreen shrub with glossy dark green foliage that can reach 8 to 10 feet tall, and similar width. And as they get older, sometimes they get these really architectural type stems, kind of twisting and kind of gnarly stems, which are actually quite pleasing. But it does give you opportunity then to place some really interesting things that you'll see in the design that we've placed near here. So if you don't like the kind of bare stems that may develop, we've included some things that would kind of cover that up. But it's just a wonderful native evergreen shrub, super tough, and giving you that year-round interest. So in the wintertime, if you happen to be outdoors, you'll have evergreen foliage to look at as well. One of the first shrubs to flower here in the Northeast is Lindera benzoin, the spice bush. Has these wonderful yellow, tiny little yellow flowers. It also will get some size, so we also place that towards the back of a border. Wonderful, spicy aroma foliage if you crush it in your hands. But you want to grow this plant not only for its fall color, which is a brilliant, brilliant yellow, but you also want to grow this because you want to attract female spice bush swallowtail butterflies. And what the females will do, and I almost guarantee if you have this in your yard, even in city settings, because the spice bush swallowtail is one of our more common butterflies, you are going to find leaves like this on your spice bush. And this is an awesome thing. You're going to want to go check these out if you see your spice bush leaves folded over. And you're going to carefully go and open this up, and you're going to be absolutely thrilled when you do so, because you're going to see this mature spice bush swallowtail caterpillar that is going to be looking at you, looking in quotes, because those are actually big false eye spots on the thorax of that caterpillar. The head is actually tucked in at the bottom of the slide. But who wouldn't want to attract this incredible creature to our yard? So that was one of the main reasons I really pushed for including the Lindera benzoin in our yards. It takes moist soils, very easy to grow. Even our garden soils are fine for this plant, and it does really well. Another small tree to include is the alternate leaf dogwood, Schweita Alternifolia, used to be Cornus Alternifolia. Beautiful terminal clusters of white flowers that are produced up above the foliage. It has a wonderful horizontal, like tiered branching pattern, which is very nice to look at. The fruits that are produced are cherished by bird species throughout the area here, catbirds and robins and such, common birds that you could find in a city setting. It doesn't really get too big here. You kind of see a mature one, maybe 20 feet tall, and you can kind of see that almost umbrella-like habit that it has. Really a wonderful small native tree. And that can be grown as an understory tree, but also, and I've seen it in full sun settings, as you see here. And then again, just to include plants for year-round interest, this is one of the red stem dogwoods, if you will, the red osier dogwood, Schweita Cerasia. And look at those winter stems. Beautiful coloration. Imagine that coming up through a layer of snow that we get here in the Northeast. Beautiful. Seasonal interest, particularly in the winter. Nice dark green foliage through the spring and summer. And then this time of year, these brilliant clusters of white fruits are being produced and again, eaten by different types of birds. It can get, 4 to 5, 6 feet tall, but this is a great one that periodically every few years, don't hesitate to go in and prune it hard to the ground. And that rejuvenates the plant, and that will give you these stems that have much brighter red coloration. And I just have a couple of things, just if you have an interest and you're on Facebook, I welcome you to check out the one page that I've been working on slowly, where it's all things about observations I've made here in New England, both plants, insects, animals, all native species of plants and things I've seen on them. And I encourage you to check that out. This has just been a wonderful exercise for me. If you have questions that we don't get to tonight, please contact me at the gardens. That's the Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens. There's my phone number, my mailing address, and I'd be happy to respond to you guys and reach out. And I thank you for joining us tonight. It's been a treat just to share with you a handful of the plants that we decided to include. And it's been a lot of fun. And I'm going to throw it back to you, Matt.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Andy. I'm going to share my screen, but before I do, if Josh, do you want to pop your screen up as well? And we'll have everyone here for some of our questions. So, Josh, if you want to, let's see. I'm asking you to start your video there. So we had some questions that came up prior to, we had asked our audience for a couple of ideas and questions that they might have for all of you. The very first thing that I wanted to address was Doug McCarty's question when he said, what hardiness zone are you in? So if both of you want to answer that, let's start with Andy. What hardiness zone are you in?
Where personally I'm in right now is zone 6.
Zone
but
6.
I grew up in zone 5.
Okay. And Josh, what about yourself?
It's pretty much the same zone around here in Boston.
Okay.
Zone 6, yeah.
And the next question I have was from Camellia. She said, I understood New Jersey tea was very attractive to rabbits. How do you protect New Jersey tea in any way that looks nice? And let's extrapolate that out beyond just rabbits, but what are some of the techniques that you use? We'll start with Josh and the city to prevent bunnies and deer from eating your plants.
Wow, that's a really good question. Well, we do have the chicken wire. We kind of put around our garden here in Boston. We have to catch and release. If we do here in Boston, it's against the law to to kind of hurt the wildlife. But we put chicken wire to kind of keep them away from eating our plants. That's pretty much all we can do here.
And I know that when we were talking about the design and when we were building together the overall design for this project as part of the guide, that plant selection was definitely something that was used as a means of trying to reduce herbivory in the design itself. And Andy, do you have any insight into the plants that were selected or any other techniques that you would recommend for keeping deer and bunnies and other critters off of our plants?
Yeah, it is a tough one. And we tried to make an effort to pick things that weren't necessarily critters' four-legged friends' favorites. That's interesting with the New Jersey tea. And the ones we have in the garden, we've never experienced an issue with rabbits with the New Jersey tea, knock on wood. You know, and like Josh says, we really, you know, we don't do too much. You know, we do some live trapping and removal, but we also, on some really vulnerable plants, we use some repellents that we've had really good luck with. You know, I understand Josh's use of chicken water, but being, you know, with a public garden, you know, that's going to detract from the look of the plant. So we've kind of not gone that route, but we've had good luck with a few of the repellents, both for rabbits and deer especially. You know, we are surrounded by fence, but, you know, they're sneaky. They can find their way in, and we've had good luck, you know, spraying our hostas and other things that we found them to eat more of. And we try to, like, getting to smaller critters, you know, limit the amount of rock walls we put in, because those literally are just, they turn into condominiums. You know, our chipmunks and red squirrels are, you know, they're happy right now. And we're lucky to have a really good fox population that's developed this past year. And, you know, we're relying on populations of our predators and, you know, hawks and things to help us control some of the animals.
And I know that was a design element that you were all looking at originally with the viburnum lentago and the white spruce being in the back, by providing that upward resting perch for some of our predatory birds to have a presence in the garden, and then that viburnum lentago to give them kind of that next layer as well. So by encouraging other wildlife to take care of the wildlife for you seems to be a great way to not only encourage nature, but to provide habitat for a plethora of species instead of just one in particular.
Right. And one thing I will add just real quick with the, like, smaller rodents and things, you know, it is important in the fall, and some of the things, if you like are really prone to being tunneled around, is, you know, cut them back early if you have to. I know it's beneficial with some things to leave them up throughout the winter, but if you notice, you know, your little blue stem grasses are constantly being girdled around, you know, get in there later in the fall, like November, if you need to, and eliminate those nesting areas for the little buggers.
And if I may add something, Matt, you know, there's a level of tolerance. You know, if it doesn't go above that threshold, they have to be able to coexist together. So that's why we create that design where everything has its place and its purpose, so we can keep the population, you know, at a level we can control. So if it gets to the point where we have to, you know, to take other measure of removal without hurting our four-legged friends, you know, we'll have to do so. But we want everything to flow in something that's very organic for everything to enjoy. I mean, that's why we say we try to create like a full functional ecosystem and bring that biodiversity, you know, that's been so lost. So one thing that we put in the design was a little pond that will attract, you know, other creature, you know, to the landscape. So I'm pretty sure you will touch on that, Matt, because that's probably one of your focal points in the design. So.
Well, I didn't want to talk too much about the aspect that I helped out with, but definitely that pond, if you've gotten a chance to see this design, the pond was definitely one of my pet projects that I was glad to help out with, and looking at things like Sparginium and Pondidaria and providing habitat for so much more than just our terrestrial beings, the ones that are going to live in small, shallow water, and those that are going to transition between both the aquatic and terrestrial world. A good question was, if you're looking at a strategy for designing an island setting, a landscape bed that would be in the health strip, the entrance or exit of a complex, or a parking lot, what are some of the things that you do to make those plannings successful? And since this is something that I'm sure Josh deals with on a daily basis in the city of Boston, what type of approach do you take when you have those small, narrow areas?
Our approach is to look for the focal point, and what is the median strip in the city of Boston or in any little island, is to put some plant that can take a beating, right? And make sure it's a little bit elevated. So don't go to the surface of the pavement. Have that buffer. So in case you know there's snow, there's salt, people walking, like, you know, cars or whatnot, so the pollution. So you have something that can absorb all that. So that's one thing we've been doing in the city of Boston. So make that elevation in the bed and really focus on the plant selection, knowing that the soil structure will change over time and will definitely impact the pH because of the seasonal change in the landscape.
Mhm.
So that's the focal point to me.
And Andy, you guys have
Yeah.
arguably the most beautiful parking lot in the country over at Coastal Maine Botanic. So do you want to give them a little bit of insight into what you do from a design approach?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of like I talked about earlier. I mean, one key thing we did, and it's important with all of these, is, most of those areas we're talking about right now the soils are pretty lousy. So, you probably, first thing you want to do is probably think about amending those soils to some extent. So you got a better, base for these plants to grow in. But, I kind of like Josh said is, picking plants that are going to be super tough and tolerate the conditions that they're going to be exposed to. And, they're not going to be pampered. Those plants you put in there, they're going to be put in, maybe initially, watered in a few times to make sure they get rooted in, and then, they're on their own. So, consider plants that put down maybe a taproot like Asclepias tuberosa, things that aren't going to mind having, 2 feet of snow dumped on them from a snowplow, and ideally, I would check those areas, make sure the drainage is decent. So in the wintertime, as that snow's melting, that water's not just sitting in those areas. It's not like creating like a well where the water sits, that it actually hopefully is draining off either into the street or somehow out of that island area.
And when people are watching today's presentation, I got a question from Karen, and she said, "You're going to show the design." Here it is here, but you can also download this. It's freely available to you and all of the participants for tonight. And I know the area that you were looking at there, it's kind of hard to see just because of the scale that we're dealing with. But this area right here, when you get a chance to look at the design, that lower area is really bringing together a lot of the plants that Andy was just talking about and some of the design elements that Josh was looking at right here. So hopefully that's helpful to Karen and the others in the audience. The next question I had for both of you is, if someone currently has an ornamental garden, it's in place right now, and they're like, "Hey, I've watched today's presentation. I understand the benefits of native plants, and I really want to change the composition of what I've got going in my garden. What might be a good strategy of starting to convert an existing landscape into one that would be native?" And if each of you could give the top tip.
You want to take that, Andy, or you want me to go first?
I'll just go real quick. Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would do, and I mean, there's lots of things you can do first, but first I would, with your existing landscape, I mean, are there things that are worth keeping, first of all? Are there things that are beneficial to some wildlife, and are they serving a purpose for the homeowner? And those are some critical things to think about. Are any of the plants, one of the main things, are any of them invasive? Are they seeding in elsewhere, in the neighborhood? Are they causing trouble, by, aggressively running everywhere and forming massive patches? I think those would be the first plants I would focus on removing. And I would do it gradually. I wouldn't do like rip out the entire landscape and just go in clean slate. I think I would maybe pick particular areas and focus on a particular site and work that way. So I'll leave it at, I'll let Josh throw his 2 cents worth in too.
One thing that I really appreciate working with Andy and Matt is I think we can speak for each other. We speak the same thought. So definitely is know what you're looking for, know what your end result will be in the landscape. Know what are you looking for, multi layers? Are you looking for a full contrast and complex but yet simple type of landscape? So know that what you have to remove, like Andy said, and stage that out. Go step by step Don't try to to remove everything at one time. Just take step by step and see, and step back and see how it look. Do you like it? What's the end result? And once you have that plan in place, I think you can't go wrong. All right, and know the importance of each plant. What do they bring into the landscape? What is the factor of biodiversity and the resiliency in the landscape? So you need to know all that about each plant. So I think Indy put it well. So beautifully said.
Definitely. And one of the things that you mentioned, Josh, is one of your hallmarks as a designer in Boston is having a complex design, but keeping it simple and having large swaths. So a question that came up was, when you're dealing with native plants in an urban environment, how do you have bold impact with your plant palette? Is it, keeping things in the same principles that you would do in an ornamental garden? Or do you, Josh, and your team in Boston, do you guys look at habitat and looking at restoring an area or putting in a significant habitat that would then benefit the general neighborhood as well? So what approach do you have when you're dealing with native plantings in Boston? Essentially is the question.
So it's sadly to say, in the Parks Department, I deal mostly with annual design, but I do think that's something that will change over time. Working with our design and construction, trying to create a different palette of native plants in our design. So even if it's native plants or annuals, so the approach, I think, remain the same, right? You can still have that bold statement and that bold landscape. Like I said, it can be complex, but yet very simple to navigate, very simple to tell a story, right? When you design with natives or you design with any perennial. So the planning process, it's very important. The time to know every single plant, the way they react to any type of soil, the way they react to the environment that they're in, is very important. So again, this is one thing that I'm working on right now to see if we can change the landscape in Boston, change the way that we see plants, and then to eradicate that green gentrification in the city of Boston. And I think anybody can take that same approach in the design. So it's very important to pay attention to plan and plan again. So don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid, to fail. Failure is a way to learn, right? And always go for the wow factor. That's me. I'm bold and go for the attractive look and for the wow factor, something that can draw your eyes in. If you walked in, that will draw you in the presence of our design here in Boston.
Well, and wow factor, if you guys have had a chance to visit Boston, you definitely have seen that and the change that you've made in the plant palette already, incorporating a lot of tropical plants from your own heritage. And I know that moving forward, you'll probably see a lot of bold statements in native plants. And speaking of bold statements in native plants, Andy, this question is going to go to you. You work at a botanic garden that focuses on both ornamental and native plants. And much like designing for a residence, when you look at what's around you in the general neighborhood, do you take in consideration what's near your plantings when you're making your design choices and your plant palette? So are you looking at the neighboring gardens and trying to create this cohesive feel? Are there certain plants that might bounce from an all native area and then kind of trickle into the other areas as well? So if you don't mind talking just a little bit about how you take the surrounding area into consideration when you're designing a native garden.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely do that, here in Maine, I'm always out looking for natural combinations of plants and textures and such, and then trying to incorporate some of those in our designs. And as you said, there's a mix of natives and non-natives. And we're incorporating more natives as we move forward. That's been a big push of mine just in the few months that I've been interim director, just because of their obvious importance. And then we try to not necessarily use the exact same native throughout the garden, but maybe a similar texture, that type of thing. And so each garden has its own separate feel, but on the other hand, by using these natives that are been found, kind of people are familiar with in our area, that brings the entire garden together, kind of it makes a more cohesive package. And what I've really been stressing and what I particularly find pleasing about the way our gardens are designed, I feel our visitors can leave the gardens with ideas that they can use in their own yards. There are combinations of native plants, that they can visit and see and think, yeah, I can do that. And I try to use plants that are, not necessarily too finicky, ones that people are going to have success with if they try them in their own yards. And, things that I see do really well in the surrounding landscape here, and don't have necessarily, a certain soil condition they need, but are maybe a little more adaptable to a range of soils. So, my whole idea is to get people to visit the gardens, get really interested in using these native plants and, incorporating them into the yards. The whole environment would be all the better if we can get everybody on board.
Exactly. And there were two questions that kind of coincide with each other. And it was from April, who was asking about factoring in climate change into the plan. And from Michelle, who was asking and noticed a lot of the same native plants in this design are ones that are used up and down the East Coast. So looking further south. And that was definitely something that was brought into the discussion with Andy and Josh, was picking plants that are going to have this broad distribution so that if climate change continues to ramp itself up, many of the plants that you see in this Boston design are applicable down further down the mid-Atlantic coast, down into the Philadelphia area, the New York region. Many of them you'll see that have broad distribution to add to that resiliency that Andy was just talking about. We have a couple minutes left, and I wanted to ask both Andy and Josh what their favorite part of the design that they put together for all of you is. Is there a specific aspect, a plant, or a design element that you both gravitate the most to? We'll start with Josh.
Oh man, my favorite part of the design, it's the connectivity of the site. So it doesn't matter where you are, you'll be able to navigate the site, right? So I'm very big on that. I'm very big on being able to create like a flow, a natural flow, right? Make it more like organic, like Frederick Law Olmsted talking about being connected, to every aspect of the landscape. So that's my favorite part of the site. If I have one more favorite part is the hidden spot where you can go in the back and then nobody see you there, and then you have those plants create that, like natural edge. Yes, that's right there. So I love that spot because nobody know you there. You can just go there and relax and have a good time and whatnot. It's like an escape for me. So I have more than one. Sorry.
Yeah, not fair. Yeah, no, I agree completely with Josh on that. The cohesiveness of the design I really love. For me, that was a big thing. And, if I had to pick a particular place in the garden, I can envision myself, if this was my yard, sitting on that little deck off the back of the house and, enjoying knowing that I've included all of this diversity of plant materials and knowing that it's going to attract all of these amazing creatures and things that sitting on that deck, I can look out. And the way Josh and I designed this is it's in layers. So you can look out and it's lower, and then it gradually moves up towards the bigger trees to the back. And it just has this wonderful, you're surrounded by plants of all different sizes and shapes. And, we've got the pond in there, and it's just, there's sound. there's fragrance, there's something there that's going to appeal to all of our senses. And it's just going to be a wonderful place to just be, and escape from the world and the chaos that's going on, and just surround yourself with beauty and nature and in a city area. I think is just incredible that you can do such a thing, and I think this design does that.
Definitely, I couldn't agree more. And I know we didn't get to everybody's questions. Stu said, let's add some nesting boxes for owls and hawks, which is always fun and a great idea. Cynthia was asking about where you can find shaded plants for under trees. Well, in the design right here underneath is existing oak, and also a couple of the plant material that you see down in the bottom next to what we had as a carpinus would fit that bill right there. We have B. Hoffmeyer, who's getting rid of their Vinca minor, which is always a good thing. And there's a lot of really cool plants you can replace it with. And I know there were some other questions that we did not get to tonight. Feel free to share those questions with your chapters as you have your upcoming meetings. Feel free to use today's presentation and the YouTube recording to help guide those discussions with your colleagues and friends. There were a couple questions about other designs and finding applicable designs. I put the link to the Native Garden Design program in the chat for all of you, and hope to have you take a look at that later. We want to thank all of you for attending tonight, and to the following individuals for their significant contributions for conceiving the idea of this program and or seeing the project through its completion. So Marty Agler, Jen Ainsworth, Denise Gehring, a mentor to myself and Josh, Susan Hall, Janice Hand, Katie Hubner, Elaine Krasinski, David Krzyniak, myself, Pam Todd, and Sally Wenzel. If you want to see these designs and other ones, again, you can download these. They also have staging plans of what type of phasing you'd want to bring this into fruition. And I know Andy and Josh are very excited for whoever in the audience tonight was inspired enough to take this design and turn their backyard into this living oasis to see that later on. We encourage you all, if you're not a member now, to join. You can become a Wild Ones member at members.wildones.org/join. We also have Facebook, YouTube as mentioned earlier, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We have an award-winning journal, and if you'd like to be a part of that award-winning journal, feel free to think about what organizations and what companies might make great sponsors for the journal. A full-page ad costs $320, and the other page breakdowns are there as follows. We also encourage all of you, if you have not seen them yet, your fellow Wild One members have put together a smattering of amazing photographs for this year's 2021 Wild Ones Photo Contest. We're in the final stages of picking out our People's Choice Award winner. So go to wildones.org/vote and pick your favorite image. And you don't have to be a member to vote. You can also encourage your friends and family, for those of you that are in the runnings for the top photo of the year, to vote for you and others as well. We hope to have you join us coming up for another presentation, this time with author, educator, and honorary director and visionary Doug Tellamy, as he presents on his newest book, The Nature of Oaks. This is on Tuesday, October 5th, starting at 6 o'clock Central Time. We also have Heather Holm, another honorary director, joining us again as she shares information all about wasps. Her guides are some of the best guides you'll ever get. I just was working with one of our instructors for one of our painting classes that used the guide to really help hone in on what pollinators she was painting. And it provides excellent descriptions, phenomenal photography. And if you got a chance to see the Bombus Among Us, I know that you're going to love learning about wasps. So with that, we hope you all have a great evening. On behalf of the Board of Wild Ones and both Josh and Andy, we can't thank you enough. We are very excited to have you here and wishing you all a fantastic evening. Thank you very much, and hope you all get a chance to download the design and follow Josh and Andy on their social media channels and check out their gardens as well. So thank you, everyone. We hope you have a great night, and remember to keep planting native plants. So wishing you all a great one, and take care.